Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. The morning air was brisk, biting at our cheeks as Jenna and I boarded the bus. Today was supposed to be an escape, a guided tour through the famed redwood forests of Northern California, a chance to rekindle a flame that had been flickering dimly between us for months. The crisp scent of pine and earth promised a day of adventure and perhaps, reconciliation. As we found our seats near the front, Jenna seemed more animated than she had in weeks, her eyes scanning the colorful brochure of our day's itinerary. I tried to share in her enthusiasm, but a knot of unease had lodged itself in my stomach, the cause of which I couldn't quite place. "Look at this, Mark!" Jenna exclaimed, pointing at a photograph of a hidden waterfall. "It says here it's a 2-hour hike from the main trail. We should definitely check it out." "Sounds great," I replied, mustering a smile. Our guide, a rugged-looking man named Leo, introduced himself as he took the driver's seat. His voice was rich and confident, his gaze lingering on Jenna a moment too long as he went over the safety protocols. Something about the way she returned his smile set my teeth on edge. We arrived at the park and began our trek, the group spreading out along the path. Jenna and I lagged behind, my attempts at conversation falling flat. She was unusually quiet, her attention seemingly caught by anything but the words I offered. An hour into the hike, Jenna tugged at my arm. "I need to use the restroom," she murmured, a flush rising to her cheeks as she glanced around. "I'll show you where it is," Leo interjected quickly, stepping towards us with a readiness that felt too rehearsed. I nodded, trying to suppress the irrational surge of jealousy. "I'll wait here," I said, watching them disappear down a narrow, leaf-strewn path. Minutes stretched into more, and an unsettling silence settled over the woods. The chirping of birds and the rustle of leaves became a backdrop to the growing worry gnawing at my thoughts. Why were they taking so long? Restlessness turned to suspicion, and finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. I followed the path they had taken, my heart pounding with each step. The trail twisted through towering redwoods, obscuring vision until, rounding a bend, I froze. There, in a secluded clearing, was Jenna, her jacket discarded, lips locked with Leo. My breath caught in my throat, a mix of heartbreak and fury flooding my senses. Neither of them noticed me at first, too lost in their betrayal. Rage boiled over, and I stepped forward, snapping a branch underfoot. They broke apart, Jenna's eyes widening in shock, her face pale as she scrambled to cover herself. "Mark. It's not what it looks like," she stammered, but the lie fell flat between us. "Really?" My voice was cold, distant. "Because it looks exactly like what it is." Without another word, I turned and walked back to the trail, leaving the whispers of my crumbling marriage behind. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I spoke to no one, my mind racing with plans of retribution. By the time the bus rolled back into the city, I had made up my mind. I would ruin her life as she had ruined mine. Divorce, disgrace, and a decisive cut from everything we had built together. Jenna tried to explain, to apologize, but the gulf between us had grown too wide, too polluted by deceit. That night, alone in the dark, I realized that the path I had chosen was one of no return. Our paths would never cross again, and in that solitude, I began to plot the chapters of my new, solitary life. The following days unfolded like scenes from a somber play I had never auditioned for. Jenna's pleas through text messages and voicemails filled my phone, a constant reminder of the turmoil swirling through our now shattered life. I responded to none. Instead, I busied myself with meetings, lawyers, accountants, anyone who could untangle the life Jenna and I had woven together over a decade. My friend Tom, who had been through his own bitter divorce, became an unexpected pillar during these trying times. We sat across from each other in a dimly lit bar downtown, the clink of glasses punctuating the hum of conversation around us. "You're doing the right thing, Mark. Protect your assets, your sanity," Tom advised, his voice a blend of sympathy and sternness. He flagged the bartender for another round. Don't let her drag you down any further. I nodded, taking a sip of the bitter draft. I just never saw it coming, Tom. Not like this. That's how it always is. But you know what you need? A fresh start. Somewhere far from all this mess. His words sparked an idea, a seed of a plan that might just offer the escape I needed. But first, I had to confront Jenna one last time. I arranged for us to meet at a neutral spot, a quiet park where we had once celebrated her 30th birthday. The day was overcast, the clouds hanging low as if mirroring the tension between us. Jenna was already there, seated on a bench under an old oak tree, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Mark," she began as I approached, her voice quivering. "I'm so sorry. I was lost, and I." "Save it, Jenna. I've heard enough," I cut her off, my tone harsher than I intended. "We're done. I've spoken to my lawyer. You'll get the paperwork by tomorrow." Her eyes widened, brimming with tears. "Please, can't we just talk about this? There's nothing left to discuss. You made your choice." I turned to leave, then stopped, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I'm moving out. Starting over. This is the last time we'll see each other." Her sobs followed me as I walked away, a sound that once would have broken me. Now, it was just a distant echo of a life I was eager to leave behind. That night, I booked a one-way ticket to Europe. The idea of distance seemed the only balm capable of soothing the burn of betrayal. I planned to start in Paris and then let fate guide me further. As I packed my bags, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Hesitant, I opened it, and my blood ran cold. The message was a photo of Jenna and Leo, looking cozy in a cafe, the timestamp showing it was taken today. Beneath the photo, a single line: "She hasn't changed. Watch your back." Chills raced down my spine. Not only was Jenna continuing her affair, but now it seemed someone was watching, someone who knew how to reach me, to unsettle me. This trip wasn't just an escape, it might well be a necessary flight from dangers unknown. As I zipped up my suitcase, I realized that while I was leaving to forget, I might also be fleeing to survive. The plot of my life was thickening, and as the plane took off the next morning, I looked down at the receding cityscape, wondering what awaited me across the ocean, in lands unfamiliar and possibly full of intrigue. The wheels of the plane touched down on Parisian soil as the early morning sun began to peek over the horizon. The City of Lights, usually a symbol of romance and renewal, now felt like a cold starting line to a race I had no map for. I navigated through Charles de Gaulle Airport, the buzz of foreign languages swirling around me, making my way to the taxi stand. The brisk morning air slapped me awake as I settled into the back of a cab, giving the driver the address of the small Airbnb I had booked in Montmartre. As the cityscape whizzed by, my mind replayed the mysterious message and the photo of Jenna and Leo. Who sent it? And why? The cab pulled up to a charming, ivy-clad building. The driver helped with my luggage, offering a polite "bon chance" before pulling away. I climbed the narrow steps to my apartment, the wooden stairs creaking underfoot, echoing the unease settling into my bones. The apartment was quaint, a stark contrast to the sprawling home I'd shared with Jenna. I tossed my suitcase on the bed and grabbed my phone, intending to call Tom. Before I could dial, a notification popped up, another message from the same unknown number. "Welcome to Paris, Mark. Don't trust anyone." My heart thudded against my ribs. I scanned the room, half expecting to find someone watching me. Shaking off the paranoia, I dialed Tom, who picked up on the second ring. "Mark. You made it. How's Paris?" "Tom, someone's been sending me messages." "They knew I was coming here," I said, skipping formalities. "What? That's creepy, man. Did you tell anyone else about your trip?" "Just you and the lawyer," I replied, pacing the small room. "Keep your eyes open, buddy. And maybe go to the police? I considered his advice but decided against it. I needed to find out more before involving anyone else, especially the authorities. Deciding to clear my head, I ventured out into the streets of Montmartre. The neighborhood was waking up, cafes brewing strong coffee, and locals hurrying along. The quaint beauty of the area was overshadowed by the sense of being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder, catching only strangers going about their day. I stopped at a small cafe, its windows fogged from the warmth inside. Settling at a corner table, I ordered a coffee, trying to blend in with the morning crowd. My phone buzzed again. Enjoying the view? Don't stay out too long. Chills ran down my spine. I scanned the cafe, my gaze locking with a man in a dark coat seated across the room. His eyes darted away, but not fast enough to escape notice. On impulse, I stood and walked over to him. "Did you send this?" I asked, showing him my phone. He looked up, confusion knitting his brows. "Pardon? Je ne comprends pas," he muttered, shaking his head. Frustrated, I apologized and stepped back outside, the air now filled with a biting wind. I decided to wander, losing myself in the winding streets, trying to outpace the fear gnawing at my thoughts. Hours later, as dusk began to blanket the city, I returned to my apartment, exhausted and no closer to answers. As I approached the building, a figure detached itself from the shadows, stepping into the dim light of the street lamp. "Mark," a female voice called out, a French accent lilting her words. "We need to talk." Turning, I faced a young woman, her features sharp, her eyes piercing. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice low. "Someone who can help you. But we must be careful." "Follow me, and trust no one else," she said, turning on her heel and disappearing down the street. With a wary glance around, I followed, my steps quickening to match hers. The game was deeper than I thought, and in the heart of Paris, I was about to dive into the unknown, hoping to find not just answers, but also a way out of the shadows that now clung so closely. The narrow streets of Montmartre twisted and turned, an echo of the chaos that had become my life. The woman, whose name I still didn't know, led me with a brisk pace, her figure a dark silhouette against the fading light. We finally stopped in front of a nondescript door tucked away in an alley draped in shadows. "This is it," she whispered, glancing around before unlocking the door. "Come." Inside, the room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of old books and stronger coffee. She motioned for me to sit down at a small table laden with various documents. "My name is Elise," she began, her voice steady. "I work for a private security firm. We were hired to keep an eye on someone you know very well." "Jenna?" I asked, my voice tight. She nodded, pulling out a folder. "Not just Jenna. The man she was with, Leo. There's more to their story than just an affair." Elise laid out photographs and documents, revealing a network of deceit that went deeper than personal betrayal. Jenna and Leo were involved in elaborate schemes of fraud, using their personal connections to manipulate and steal. They had been under surveillance for months. "Why tell me this?" I asked, anger bubbling inside me. "Because you were getting too close to uncovering things on your own. They planned to set you up, frame you for their crimes. The messages, the photos, it was all to scare you, to keep you off balance," Elise explained, her eyes not leaving mine. I processed her words, the weight of the deception heavier than I could have imagined. Jenna hadn't just cheated, she had tried to destroy me completely. "What now?" I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "We have enough to go to the police, to expose everything. But you need to be protected," Elise said, her tone urgent. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and profound betrayal. "Let's do it. Let's bring them down." The next few hours were a blur as Elise coordinated with her team and law enforcement. By dawn, arrests had been made. Jenna and Leo were taken in handcuffs, their empire of lies crumbling around them. I watched from a distance, hidden from view. Jenna looked around wildly, her eyes searching for perhaps a familiar face or an escape route. When her gaze met mine, the recognition flashed across her face, a mix of fear and surprise. I felt nothing but revulsion. The woman I had loved was a stranger, her deceit too deep for any emotion but disdain. With the case building against them, my role was minimal. The evidence was overwhelming. I chose not to attend the trial, to not see Jenna again. Instead, I finalized my move, settling in a small town far from Paris, far from the past. Months later, I received a letter, forwarded from my old address. It was from Jenna, her handwriting shaky, the ink smudged with what I guessed were tears. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. I hope one day you can forgive me, even if we never see each other again. I understand the hate, but know that I never hated you. Goodbye." I read the letter once, then threw it into the fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken. Forgiveness was a currency I no longer valued, at least not for her. Elise stayed in touch, ensuring my safety and offering updates on the case. Her presence in my life became one of the few stabilizing forces during a time of upheaval. The betrayal taught me more about trust and the shadows it can cast. Jenna and Leo, forever linked by their crimes, were now just a chapter in my past, a lesson learned in the harshest of ways. As I settled into my new life, the hatred for what Jenna had done slowly receded, replaced by a resolve to never let such deceit touch me again. The paths we had walked together were overgrown now, the bridges burnt and the way forward clear. I was alone, but at peace, the shadows of Paris a distant, if bitter, memory.